Right, well, we're here today to give you an overview of the work I've been doing for Gary and his family on the Gray family tree and the Metcalfe family tree. Gary commissioned me to do some research in memory of his mum and dad. So what I've been doing, and I've been working on two separate sides of the family. There's Gary's dad, Alan Ernest Gray's branch, and his mum, Dorothy Ivy Metcalfe's branch. So that culminates in two separate packages, two separate trees. And in this little case, we have two mini trees, and we have two sets of family history books, which I'm going to go through in detail at the end, because this is where we store all the records that I found, all the certificates and things like that, for you to look at in detail later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pin up the Gray family tree to start with, so that any of Gary's family who don't live locally or live abroad can have a look at the work we've done, and it gives me a chance to explain a little bit more in detail about certain members of the family that I want to concentrate on, and also it gives me a chance to perhaps say about some of the information that we're missing. So if you were at home, obviously you could just unroll this and put it on the dining room table and go through it at your leisure, but what I'm going to do is pin it up on a display board, which I think works really well if everybody wants to gather round to have a look. And also, if you wanted to do a family reunion or something like that, I'm just going to re-roll it back though, because it's the wrong way around. But if you wanted to do a family reunion or at a family birthday, something like that, you can always pin it up on the wall with a few drawing pins, and people can stand around with a drink and have a good old reminisce. It's too late though to do that. I'm just going to do this. Right, so I'm going to clip it up here. Phil can reach out with one hand. Thank you, darling. So I'm going to start here and tell you a little bit about how we did it, because normally what you do is you start with the main person on the tree, who's Alan Ernest Gray, and then you would work backwards from Alan, finding out about his parents, looking on the records to find his grandparents, great-grandparents, etc. And normally we would just go up to Alan's ancestors, but we wanted, Gary and his family wanted the lower branches on as well. So what I had to do here was I had to rely a lot on family information, because there's not a lot of records online or available for living people. So Alan went through here all his, Gary went through all his siblings and their families, and you'll see that they're all on the tree here. So the lower branches were, the information was given to me by the family. So we've got Terry's family here, and his children, and his grandchildren. Then we've got Gary's family, with his two and the grandchildren. Then we've got Rodney with his children. We've got Philip and his family here, baby due in March. We've got Neil, and we've got a baby due here in May. And then lastly we've got Gary's sister Karen and her family, some of whom are in Florida, so hopefully they'll enjoy seeing this tree. And then we've got Alan's brother Ivor and his family. Going round the corner we've got Alan's brother Paul and his family. So that'll do. So that's the bottom generation of Gary's branch. So we can go back round now. So you'll be able to see in detail later. Have a look and find yourself on the tree, everybody. So back to Alan here. Luckily we knew a little bit about Alan and obviously his dad Ernest Leopold Gray, which is a super name, Leopold, an easy-ish name to research. But his wife Edith Williams was a little bit more difficult, because Williams is quite a common name. So you'll see what I found out about the Williams family in the book. And then what we did was we looked at Ernest Leopold Gray's birth certificate, which of course gives the name of Ernest's parents, who were George Gray and Rosetta Wilson. I'm just going to change my glasses, so. Now George Gray's really interesting because his second wife, Rosetta's his second wife, and I think she's about 30 odd years younger than him, so quite a lot younger when they got married. In fact, she might be 35 years younger, might Rosetta. And the only child that they had together was Ernest Leopold. So that makes the family tree quite small actually. There's normally lots and lots of children, but there's only Ernest. And George is really interesting because he was in the Merchant Navy, and we managed to find a certificate from, I think it was dated about 1827 or something, no, about 1861 I think, saying that he'd served 14 years in the Merchant Navy. So you'll see that in the family history book about George. And then when George died, Rosetta married again, so that's George and his wife. Then on the census records we managed to find George with his parents, William, and you'll see here William's born about 1798, and all this branch is from Suffolk actually. So you see, Gary, you're all Southerners at heart. So they're all living here in Suffolk. We need to do a little bit more research to find out the exact date of William's birth, but we need to look at parish records to find that out, so it gets a bit difficult. Now we know that William's mum is Judith because she's on the census record with him, but she's a widow, so we know her husband's obviously Mr. Gray, and he's probably born about 1768, but we don't know his name yet. What we need to do is find the parish records, which aren't online, so this is where my research stopped. So that's the direct branch in Gray for the Greys, so that's that. But obviously there are other people on each side of the branches, and we've tried to capture them all on the tree. So I might move it out Phil now so you can just go around the back. So before George married Rosetta, he married Maria Adams, and he had this branch of the family. So this branch of the family, Ernest Leopold, this is Ernest Leopold Gray's half-brother, and he's called George Adams Gray after his mum, and he married Fanny Med, which is an unusual name. She had a baby before that she married George, and there are some more children to be investigated. So the branch comes down here, because they're all related to you, Gary, and family, but they're the half-siblings, and there's quite a lot of them, and these are in Durham, so they move along here. And then obviously higher up the tree there's other Gray branches, so there will be some other people down here if we did a bit more research with the surname Gray, because of course at the moment I think there's only about two possible people carrying on the Gray surname. So George Ian Gray here. I'm just looking for the boys, the younger boys on the Gray branch, and we've got Howard and little Charlie here, but then these are not Gray surnames now, girls, and then obviously these are Brooks, these are going to be Hudson's, Hannay. So actually we've only got a couple of options here to carry on the Gray surname. So I'll just quickly show you the Gray family history book. So I've done a smaller tree, just so you can get your head around who everybody is, because it gets quite complicated. So we've got Alan here, Ernest Leopold, George William, and unknown. And then of course that links together with Dorothy's tree, a separate family altogether, which I'm going to go through on a separate video. So you can sort of have that in your hand to try and get your head around who everybody is. And then I've done a family history book where I've stored all the records that we found. We've got some certificates, we've got some census records, all of which you can look at just to see how I did use the information and to get a bit more detail about where they lived and what they did. Okay, so they're the records. And then each person has a page, each of the main ancestors has a page of their own which summarises their life. So you can have a read of that at your leisure as well. Oh, and then the other thing I've put in here is a list. So everybody on the big tree I've got them in a list format here, which might be easy to look at, and you can add any updates to that list. Okay. And then for the people with the other surnames, such as Wilson and Williams on the grey tree, you can put, I've filed their things separately in the book too. So I think that's about it for the grey tree. I've finished my work on it now, so obviously any other additions or updates for these new babies, I'd have to be recommissioned later on in the year if you wanted an update, or if somebody wanted a copy in the family, that can be arranged. I think that's about it, Phil, is it? And then we're going to deliver it to Gary later today about 7:30. So we'll probably do a bit of videoing with Gary and Alison to add to this. Right, that's it, bye for now. So, most of this is your work.
Yeah.
Because I can't find much out about
That's
this
fine.
level. So,
Yeah.
the future depends on people getting back to us.
Yeah.
Because we can't look them up. There's very few modern records online.
And that's the thing, you could ask them.
Yes. I think when
For
they
that.
see the name,
Yeah.
they'll
Say
want
their
to have
own
the
names,
babies,
and then
won't
they'll
they?
have it
Yeah,
got
hopefully.
Yeah.
So all this is taken, we'll have a look in a minute,
Yeah.
at what the information you gave me, and there's loads of you, Gary, isn't there?
There is.
So there's your Terry's branch here,
Yeah.
then there's your branch here,
Yeah.
your, is it called Rodney or Roddy?
Roddy. Yeah, Roddy.
Then
Rodney,
is it
yeah.
Phil?
Philip, yeah.
Philip, yeah. Neil,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
walking around here, Karen,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then the other Grays, so your Uncle Ivor
Yeah.
and his, and your Uncle Paul and his.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's wonderful, that's your main branch there.
Right.
So it spreads out, because obviously it spreads sideways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so we look at Alan, and then normally we go back in time. Now luckily, we ordered his birth certificates, I think, a while ago, didn't
Yeah.
we? And from that we know for certain, absolute certain, it's
Leopold.
Ernest Leopold Gray
Yeah.
and Edith Williams.
Yeah.
So that's marvellous that we've got that starter.
Yeah.
And because he was born in 1900, we know he's going to be on the 1901 census and
Yeah.
the 1911 census.
Right.
So that means we find his father.
Yeah.
So again, you'll see all the records in your book. We found his father, George Gray, who's
Yeah.
really interesting. He's the one that was in the merchant services.
Right.
Born in Suffolk, actually.
Yeah.
Ended up in Durham, we think, in 1904 when he died.
Right.
And he married twice. Rosetta, your great-gran, is actually his second wife, and she was so young,
Said
35 years younger.
Right.
And probably because of that, they only had one child,
Yeah.
luckily, otherwise you'd have hugely. So they only
Yeah.
had Ernest Leopold, and she named him Leopold after her brother. You'll see in the book.
Right.
She had a brother called Ernest Leopold.
Ah.
So that all
Okay.
nice and sort of confirms it all.
Yeah.
We didn't really know what had happened to Rosetta, so I sent off for a death certificate.
Yeah.
Rosetta Gray, and when it came, it wasn't her.
Ah. Right.
So I thought, oh no, I spent £10 of Gary's
Yeah.
money.
That's
But
what I said.
actually,
Yeah.
it was great, because I thought, well, if there's no record for her, she
Yeah.
must have married again,
Right.
which was why I couldn't find a Rosetta Gray. So I looked and looked and looked and found her. She
Rosetta
married
Gray.
again, and she was Rosetta Harrington the second
Ah,
time.
right, okay.
And on the census, little Ernest was Ernest Harrington. So it took me ages, but I've got them now. So I
Got them
tracked them
all,
down
yeah.
from that wrong
So it
death
did help.
certificate. It did
Yeah.
help. Yeah, it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
George is really interesting. We've got his certificate, haven't we, from 1861 of his 14 years in the merchant
Yeah.
services, which is great.
Yeah.
And then his dad is William.
Are these all the census then?
Yeah,
So you
this
put
is where
all
they were
they're
living.
at the time,
We've put
yeah.
on where they were living on the censuses
Right.
to see if they moved around much. The top end of your tree seemed to stay in Suffolk.
Yeah.
I think it's only when you get to George that he ended up in Hartlepool.
Right.
We need to do a bit more digging about his, to find out where he died.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a common name.
Mm.
So William, up there in Suffolk again.
Yeah.
We don't know his wife's name yet because we're getting really early now, 1798.
Yeah.
We need parish records to find his baptism and his marriage to her.
Right.
That would tell us her maiden name and his dad.
Yeah.
Now luckily, on one of the census records, living with him is his mum, Judith Gray.
Oh.
So that was a find. So we know one generation back, but we don't know her maiden name. So we don't know her husband's name yet.
Yeah.
So this is where lots more work's required, probably with local family histories in Suffolk. It
Right.
gets quite complicated.
Okay.
But for now, we've done quite good. That's
Yeah,
about
yeah.
1768, we think.
Not too bad.
So
Yeah.
not too bad there with the Greys. And then when you look at the census record, it of course tells you the siblings.
Yeah.
So the software that I use and the website I use says, would you like to add the siblings? So I say yes. So I added them.
So they're from
So these are...
Sarah and William?
Yeah, so the George's brothers and sisters, Sister Sophia, brother David, and then so obviously the Greys come down this branch, as well as Ernest's branch. So they all come down. So George, his first wife, so your granddad has a half-brother. We'll follow it round to his first wife here, and I've written on George Gray's first wife. They only had one, called George Adams Gray. So this is your granddad, Ernest Leopold's half-brother. Now, I don't know if anybody's heard of him in the family.
No.
Because he died in 1910. Probably why nobody's heard of him. But he's got a branch. 4 children I can't quite find yet, but he's got Eleanor, and he's got Emily, and they've got kids, and then we go around. He's got Maria, he's got Elizabeth, he's got George William.
All brothers and sisters?
These are all half-brothers and sisters.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Look at that.
So we go right round here, just to this bit.
Bit dark on this side.
Phil's got it in the light this morning. Right round to the end of the Grey branch, but all these can be worked on later if people want to do, to get more Greys down here that are all half branches to yours.
You've got quite a lot of information there, I must say. It does.
Doesn't it look super?
And that's only Grey, that's a small side of the family.
Yes.
Look at it.